this week's drive, we see how to get fuel and tyres fast and watch how not to. We make a splash with dash and slide to victory. All this and more in this week's Drive. Multiple Formula One world champion Michael Schumacher has been made an ambassador of the Republic of San Marino as the tiny country aims to reinforce its links with Ferrari. Schumacher, who was offered the post for his humanitarian work, was formally invested at a recent ceremony. He dominated last season with 11 wins in 17 races, but this year the competition has been much harder. He didn't get to the podium until he won the first race in Europe, curiously the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola in April, on the same weekend that his mother died. The 34-year-old German, who's already a UNESCO ambassador, will be involved in humanitarian causes which will not clash with his racing commitments.
Unfortunately, in the world, there are millions of people who are suffering. Hence, something must be done to help them. Children especially need compassion and support, since they are unable to help themselves.
The event was held in the Republic of San Marino government buildings and was attended by leading dignitaries of the tiny independent state.
No, it's a very nice situation, and where we can do even more of what I have started already with UNESCO in the past. We have more means of and more possibilities to achieve something.
Michael was accompanied by various Ferrari officials, including technical director Jean Todt. And if you're not sure exactly where it is, San Marino is a tiny landlocked principality on Italy's northeast side, near Rimini, Misano and the Santa Monica racetrack. No longer used for Formula One, but popular with motorcycle racers and overlooked by a convent. In modern racing, pit stops play a strategic and often a decisive role. How often in Drive have we seen races hanging in the balance only to be decided in the split seconds that the car is stationary, being refueled and having new tyres fitted? Here's a look at how the pit crews from McLaren Formula One and the Mercedes-Benz German touring car or DTM series performs these tasks. Stopping for new boots and a long or a short splash of fuel has been everyday business in Formula One for years, but DTM has seen compulsory pit stops only since 2001. And until last year, only the tyres were changed. But since the beginning of this year, the races have been extended to roughly 160 kilometres or about an hour's racing at most tracks. DTM cars need about a litre of fuel to race to 70 litres. However, unlike in Formula One, for the heavier touring cars, tyre wear is still the biggest problem for teams. Since the start of this season, changes to the rules in Formula One have made the qualifying session a part of the race. Where teams used to send their cars out to qualify with almost no fuel on board, now they are not allowed to refuel before the start of the race. So drivers must qualify as they will start the race. Running light will mean an early stop, which may cost track position. Later in the show, we'll see two races where things go right and horribly wrong in the pits. Due to the lower amount of fuel taken on board during a race, a DTM pit stop is usually quicker than in Formula One. Refueling a Mercedes CLK V8 is performed faster than a tyre change, and the DTM crews manage this in less than 5 seconds. In Formula One, where the amount of fuel taken on dictates the time, pit stops are usually about 8 or 9 seconds, while in DTM, 5 to 7 is the average. And in the DTM series, Marcel Fassler returned to the place of his last triumph, the A1 Ring in Austria, exactly a year after winning at the famous track for the 8th round of the championship. The Swiss driver started from pole and began brilliantly, opening up a 3-second lead on the opening lap. However, his run was stopped when Frenchman Jean Alesi, who had bogged down in second position on the grid, and Peter Dambrek of Britain collided halfway through the first lap and the race was stopped. After the track was cleared of razor-sharp bits of carbon fibre, the restart saw Fassler take the lead again from reigning champ Laurent Aiello. The restart was much closer than the original, and on lap 7, championship leader Bernd Schneider passed Aiello for second place. On lap 10, Schneider was unlucky not to pass Fassler when they both pitted at the same time. As we've seen, slick pitwork can win or lose races. From then on, the veteran Schneider would hang on to Fassler for the rest of the race. On lap 21, Manuel Reiter was lucky to get away with this spin. He finished 10th, having started 11th. On lap 27, and still with a narrow lead, Fassler pitted for the second and last time and was able to stay ahead of Schneider. But the 39-year-old wasn't about to allow his adversary an easy run home. On the final lap, the German pulled alongside Fassler and the two traded paint in the corners. But Fassler held his line and held on to win the 40-lap race. For the 27-year-old from German-speaking Switzerland, the victory was long overdue after several podium places this year.
I was always under pressure, but I gave my best and I fight for my place. And in the end, I think I just win, and that's important.
Schneider was 7/10 behind, with Christian Albers third. Schneider leads the title by 3 points from Albers. NASCAR went to its roots for the Southern 500 at Darlington. It was the 54th running of the oldest 500-mile race. The holiday tradition will be no more in 2004 when the Labor Day weekend race date moves to the California Speedway. So the Southern 500 will move to a November date, possibly under the lights, at stock car racing's oldest venue. Ryan Newman started from the pole and led for 120 laps, but made an uncharacteristic mistake during a routine pit stop. His engine stalled and his crew tried repeatedly to push start the Dodge. After he'd lost 7 laps, last year's top rookie realized that he'd hit the kill switch on the steering column. On lap 165, rookie Casey Mears slid in front of 5-time Southern 500 winner Jeff Gordon and slammed into the wall. The resulting multi-car tangle also involved Ken Schrader, Dave Blaney, Johnny Benson and Kenny Wallace, yet only Benson in car 10 was unable to continue. Terry Labonte, whose last win came in Texas in March '99, ran among the leaders all day and finally went ahead for the first time on lap 335. Labonte got a great restart when the green flag waved for lap 338. He built a lead of more than 2 seconds over Kevin Harvick, weaving through lap traffic. The 47-year-old Labonte, whose titles came in 1985 and 96, and whose career seemed to be waning, beat Harvick's Chevrolet to the line by 1.65 seconds. In the 14 kart races this season, the winner has started no lower than 4th, and that held true in Denver. Starting on pole for the second time this year, Bruno Junqueira grabbed the lead. If you can't get one, try the other. On lap 1, Rodolfo Lavin made contact with teammates Roberto Moreno and Mario Dominguez. The incident ended Lavin's race and he was off to explain to team owner Derek Walker. Also on the first lap, Paul Tracy moved up 3 spots when he passed Darren Manning, Mario Haberfeld and Tiago Monteiro in a masterful display on the tight street course. Oriol Sevilla took the lead at the first pit stop, passing Bruno Junqueira by inches, but the Brazilian retook the lead before the second round of pit stops. During that round of stops, Tracy made contact with Jimmy Vasser and then knocked over one of his own pit crew, who wasn't injured. There were more problems for Dominguez. He was spun around trying to pass Haberfeld but finished 7th. Haberfeld was classified 10th. Rookie Ryan Hunter-Reay wasn't injured when fire blazed through his pit as he was signaled out of the pits and drove off with a fuel nozzle stuck in the car. Having had a debut race spin on cold tyres 1 lap earlier, Formula One refugee Mika Salo was shunted by Monteiro on lap 85, ending the race for both of them. Sébastien Bourdais trailed Junqueira over the final 16 laps, but couldn't catch him. Days of Thunder Series leader Ben Collins of Britain made a better start than German pole sitter Roland Rehfeldt for the 9th round of the ASCAR Championship at Rockingham. Unlike the last race, which had a good crowd, this race was in front of empty grandstands, in stark contrast to the huge crowds that this racing draws in the US. Almost immediately, yellow flags were being waved as Irishman Kieran Dines spun into the wall at turn 4 on the very first lap. The race was restarted on lap 8, with Collins maintaining his lead, but Rehfeldt was a close second. Colin White was dropping back in 3rd place, but stayed ahead of Anthony Swan. White had a superb pit stop to get out in front of Rehfeldt. But Collins had a good change a lap later and shot out with a lead of more than 4 seconds. On lap 33, Rayfelt passed White after they ran side by side for an entire lap. The positions remained static until another yellow flag came out for debris on the track on lap 40. When the race restarted on lap 46, Collins powered ahead and Ian McKellar passed White for third place on lap 48. Collins took the flag with Rayfelt 1.46 seconds behind. McKellar was just 0.6 ahead of White, and Collins' third victory of the season has made him favourite to win the series. He leads Michael Verges, who finished in 5th, while White and Rayfelt are tied for 3rd spot. After 7 years of intense research and development, a British company has unveiled an amphibious vehicle that can reach speeds of over 100 miles an hour on land and in excess of 30 miles an hour on water. A former New Zealand diplomat, Alan Gibbs, has spent tens of millions of dollars developing the Aquada at a factory in Warwickshire in England.
Building a new vehicle is never easy. Building a new kind of vehicle is exponentially more challenging. What you will see today has been 7 years in the making, taken nearly 1 million hours, employed 70 engineers, and cost tens of millions of pounds. In the process, we have filed 60 patents and complied with every regulation covering cars and boats in the rulebook.
Notice that the vehicle has a central control position. Notice I'm avoiding saying car and driver. Notice it has a hull underneath, no openings in the front, and no doors on the sides. An Aquada is a water catchment and storage area, dug out and lined with plaster to retain the water. It's apparently also a Pokemon, one of those strange Japanese cartoon characters. And now...
The Gibbs Aquada is not a car that goes in the water. It is not a boat with wheels. It is this third thing. A genuine amphibian, equally at home on water or road.
At the unveiling, he said the vehicle can adapt to move between land and water in 6 seconds, and at the touch of a button. With wheels that retract, a marine jet propulsion and a speedboat-like hull, the makers claim that it's powerful enough to tow a water skier. It has no doors to ensure that it has a leak-proof hull, so passengers must climb into the open-topped car. Engineers on the project faced many obstacles as they created the vehicle.
All sorts of questions and problems had to be solved. Some regulatory, such as when the marine regulations tell you to do the opposite of the automotive regulations, which takes precedence. Some mechanical, such as how do you use the same steering system for land and water. And some scientific, such as how do you get a ton of thrust from a jet pump, which is half the length and a quarter of the weight of what established jet manufacturers said was physically possible. We have found answers to all of these questions and a whole host more.
Potential customers could be in some of the world's biggest cities on waterfronts, including London, New York, Sydney and Hong Kong. The company will roll out 100 of the vehicles this year, each one selling for about £150,000.
I think what this vehicle actually proves is that Britain has still got it when it comes to engineering, innovation and technology. We scouted the world really looking for the right skills to do this job, and we found them here in the UK.
Once driven into the water, the wheels tilt up, fold away, and a jet unit at the rear sucks in water and forces it out again at high pressure to drive the car across either fresh or sea water.
Well, this vehicle has been designed for the world market, so it will be legal in all countries in the world. Initially we'll be selling it in the UK, but it will roll out to the rest of the world. The sort of person that will buy this sort of vehicle is obviously somebody who is really looking for something unique.
Gibbs claims his high-speed amphibian technology is a world first and a landmark for the 70 engineers and designers who spent the last 7 years challenging engineering convention. He hopes the design can be applied to other wheeled vehicles for urban transport, recreation, emergency services and the military. I hope there's absolutely no similarities with the equally advanced Tucker torpedo. Prague's Marketa Stadium staged the Czech Speedway Grand Prix, where Australian Jason Crump won last year. The seventh meeting of the 9-round season was briefly delayed when Hans Andersen and Andreas Jonsson crashed out of the first semi-final after Rune Holte grabbed the lead. Incredibly, both riders lined up for the restart, but neither would advance to the final as Holte and Nicky Pedersen went through. Jason Crump and current world champion Tony Rickardsson would join them in the final. Crump won the second semi-final, ahead of Rickardsson, with Thomas Tapinka and Crump's fellow Australian Lee Adams being eliminated. Crump made the best start in the final, beating Rickardsson to the first corner. Rickardsson held the inside line onto the back straight, but Crump out-accelerated the Swede to remain in front. Pedersen was in last place after starting from lane 4, but Nicky, who shared the world standings lead with Adams going into the race, passed Holte for third as the Norwegian struggled in Rickardsson's wake. Not content with third place, Pedersen then closed in on the world champion. Crump pulled away to win the Czech Grand Prix for a second year in a row. Rickardsson held on to second and moved to the top of the championship. Pedersen finished third and is now 1 point behind Rickardsson in the title, with Crump another point behind him. Italian Loris Capirossi set a new lap record at the Estoril circuit to claim pole position for the MotoGP of Portugal. The Ducati rider set a new qualifying record on the 4.2-kilometre circuit just outside Lisbon. Capirossi set the previous record at Estoril 2 seasons ago in a 500cc race, but Valentino Rossi bettered that mark in the first session. Capirossi's compatriot Max Biaggi, who had been in third place at the end of Friday's session on his Honda, moved up 1 place to start the 11th race of the 16-round MotoGP season from second place on the grid. Finishing just 26 thousandths of a second behind Biaggi was two-time defending champion Rossi on a similar works Honda. Sete Gibernau was the only non-Italian on the front row of the grid for the race. The Spanish Honda rider improved 1 position into 4th place and onto the front row. Olivier Jacques impressed in the previous day's session, taking provisional 2nd place, but the French Yamaha rider was knocked off the front row and dropped to 5th place on Saturday. Another Yamaha rider, Shinya Nakano, took 6th place. The Japanese reached the 2nd row of the grid, and the top 9 riders were covered by less than a second. Spain's Tony Elias led 250 qualifying on Friday, and his time wasn't bettered on Saturday. Alex De Angelis of San Marino set a new lap record for a 1:25 to claim pole position ahead of Spaniards Daniel Pedrosa and Jorge Lorenzo. The Portuguese race is the last European round before the teams head to Rio, Australia and Asia, and Max Biaggi made a flying start. The Italian passed pole sitter Loris Capirossi and left defending MotoGP world champion Valentino Rossi in his wake, who fell back to 4th. Rossi passed Gibernau at the end of lap 1 and soon had Capirossi in his sights. Ducati rider Capirossi was helpless to stop the charge of the 24-year-old Italian, and Rossi took 2nd place. 4 times 250cc world champion Biaggi soon had his arch-rival locked onto his tailpipe. Rossi out-accelerated his rival along the start-finish straight at the end of lap 13 to take the lead and pushed on towards his 5th victory of the season. Once Biaggi had been overtaken, the main battle for position was raging further down the field. Gibernau, who is 2nd behind Rossi at the top of the MotoGP Championship standings, passed Capirossi for 3rd place in the latter stages of the race, and the pair fought like stray dogs. This would be the 55th Grand Prix win of Rossi's career, passing 5 times world champion Mick Doohan for 4th place on the all-time victory list. Giacomo Agostini leads with 122 wins. Gibernau was outpaced on the final run to the line as Capirossi claimed 3rd place by less than a bike's length.
We make fantastic work during the practice. Say thank you to the mechanics, to the team, because we fix all the problem. We know we have a good potential, and today we use the bike 100%. So I'm very happy also because Gibernau finished 4th. So more point for the championship. Thank you.
Biaggi took second place and Capirossi completed an all-Italian podium. With Gibernau fourth, Rossi moves closer to his fifth title in 6 seasons, across 4 categories. He's reached the podium for a staggering 18th consecutive race, passing Douan's previous record of 17. After a good start to the 250 race, first-time pole sitter Tony Elias slipped down to third place. But the Spaniard fought back to record his third win of the season, and last year's event he crashed and remounted 3 times. Manuel Poggiali played safe with second place, with Frenchman Randy Depunier taking third on an all-Aprilia podium. Poggiali looks reasonably safe for his first 250 title, but second place is open to any one of several riders. An early crash forced a restart in the 125 race, but once it had settled down, a ferocious battle for the lead developed between Spaniards Pablo Nieto and Hector Barbera. Nieto, son of motorcycle legend Angel Nieto, pipped Barbera to the line by just 22 thousandths of a second to claim his first professional Grand Prix victory. Alex de Angelis of San Marino finished third. Spanish teenager Dani Pedrosa, fourth in Portugal, keeps his lead in the title, but there's up to 125 points still on tap, so it can go anywhere. Finally, a company which for years produced a motoring laughingstock has stopped making invalid three-wheelers and is now trying to reinvent itself with a skeletal four-wheeler instead. The British car company Reliant has launched an unusual new microcar aimed at a new generation of urban motorist, although it looks more like a golf buggy.
Definitely a youth market vehicle. The youth, I think, will be attracted by its funky colours, the lack of doors, the open nature, the B-up styling. It's just a cute, funky vehicle, and that's why we realise it will appeal to the youth market today.
The Reliant Robin was the butt of many jokes, but provided both thick-skinned and elderly motorists with exceedingly cheap transport. Although the car's badged a Reliant, it's styled by Giugiaro Design, a name usually associated with Italian thoroughbreds, and it's made by the French manufacturer Ligier. The first cars are left-hand drive, but right-hand drive models for the British market will soon be available. British buyers can join the revolution for £6,000.
The B-Up's powered by a 505cc petrol engine. While this is a small half-litre unit, it's good for 60 miles an hour, yet returns up to 75 miles per gallon. It's lightweight in nature. It's only something like 330 kilograms in weight, which is why it achieves the fuel economy it does. So for a youth car, it still has respectable performance, yet isn't going to break the bank when it comes to filling up the tank.
Although the B-Up is open to the air, there is a heater for the colder days. Quite what is done about the rain, for which Britain is famous, side impact protection or security, isn't mentioned. But there's probably a market for B-Ups in sun-drenched holiday resorts, taking over from the Mini Moke, perhaps. However, for £6,000, you'd think there'd be a bit more to it. It has the practicality of a scooter. You get wet when it rains. And the advantages of a car. You get stuck in traffic jams. Let me think about this. So, whether you're losing, winning or crashing, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.